what's up? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new, my name's Brie and I'm so happy that you're here. I got my PJ's coffee. I'm excited for today's video. Definitely a little bit nervous. I've never done a video like this before. I like to keep my videos like positive and happy, and this video is definitely a little bit different, but I think it's really important to talk about things like this and showcase things like this. The inspiration I got for today's video is actually from Alex Earl. She made a video on Hot Mess talking about her journey with anxiety, and it honestly made me feel so much better and so much less alone just to hear her story and to know that like it's really easy to hear that everyone has anxiety, but when it comes down to it, no matter how many people say that they have anxiety, you still feel like really alone because you're just like, they just don't get it. But Alex Earl, like going in depth and talking about exactly what she struggles with like on a daily basis, made me feel like I was really not alone, because a lot of the things that she deals with, I also deal with, and it was just cool to like feel like I could connect to somebody and that like someone actually understood the feeling of anxiety and like what it's like, because everyone's anxiety is so different. But I thought making this video would just bring awareness to it, and if you're feeling alone, maybe this video will help you. Anxiety is definitely an ongoing thing. In my opinion, there's really no like cure. You're never really like cured from anxiety, but it can definitely get better. So yeah, I want to just tell you guys my story. Hearing it from Alex Earl was like really inspirational, because I was like, wow, she's so successful and perfect, and if she struggles with anxiety, I can deal with mine. I feel like it's also really cool to hear it from somebody that's just like a normal, like average college girl. I hope this video helps you guys, and yeah, let's get into it. So when I was little, I was fearless. Like I literally had not a care in the world. I started theater when I was 7 years old. Even at 5 years old, I would go up on stages and sing karaoke. I would sing at different events. I loved singing. I would never get nervous. And my parents would always be like, wow, like she's so fearless. She like doesn't even get nervous. And then I would say as I started getting a little bit older, I started getting more and more nervous for shows, because I obviously continue doing theater. I would get really anxious before a show. I think the first show that I like really experienced really bad anxiety with was Annie. I was playing Annie at the age of 10, and I would get so nervous before the show, like so beyond nervous. And then after that, I just would get more and more anxious performing. I still love to do it, and to this day, I still love performing. But I was definitely noticing I was getting more and more anxious before performing, which is something like I really hadn't dealt with much before. And then we go to high school. High school was not a nice time for me. I switched schools a few times. 8th grade was really rough for me. I had an experience where a girl commented on my weight, and that sent me into a spiral. I went to the bathroom crying, couldn't even go back to class, had to leave school. It was horrible. And after that, I just felt like I didn't really have any friends at school. So I switched schools, and it didn't really help because I had more friends, but I was trying so hard to fit in that I like forgot who I was, and I just wasn't being myself. I got into a really bad eating disorder, which I struggled with for a very long time. I would say it was less anxiety and more depression. I say that lightly. I know like I was never diagnosed with depression. I don't have depression. I can only imagine what that's like. I just mean I wasn't happy and I wasn't myself, and I was definitely having times where I just wanted to go home and cry, and I didn't have any motivation or joy in life, and I was crying and I didn't know why I was crying. But at this point, the anxiety wasn't anything too bad. I just wasn't happy with myself because I was trying so hard to fit in, because all I wanted was to have friends and to be loved, and I didn't feel like I could be myself around people. The first time I remember struggling a lot with anxiety was when COVID started. Freaked out when I heard about COVID because my mom is super health conscious, and that really scared me that there was like a virus that there was nothing we could do about. And so I started getting really stressed about that. I was anxious all the time, super nervous. When we went into lockdown, even more nervous, anxious all the time. And yeah, that was when I definitely noticed that my anxiety like kicked up a notch. It was March of 2021, a year after the pandemic had started, and my family was still in quarantine. Like I didn't go back to school the next year. I was still on basically lockdown. I was just like sitting watching like the news, and all of a sudden I was having like a lot of trouble breathing, and my palms were really sweaty, and like I just like couldn't get a hold of myself. And I went and sat with my mom, and I'm like, I don't feel good, like I can't breathe. And she was like, Bree, like you're breathing, you're fine. I'm like, Mom, no, like I literally cannot breathe, like I don't know what to do. Like, and I just went down the spiral. I felt like I was gonna pass out. I was sweating, my heart was racing. I went and sat in a bed, laid down. That wasn't helping, so I got back up. I I went out and I tried to eat and I couldn't eat. It was horrible. It took me like 3 hours after that to fall asleep because I was so worked up. It was a horrible experience, and I didn't know what it was. And my mom told me, I think you're having a panic attack. And that was my first panic attack ever. So I had no idea what it was, why it was happening. I was like, I'm not stressed out. Like, nothing happened. I don't know why I would be anxious. And my mom said that can just happen. If you're experiencing a lot of anxiety just in your daily life, which I was from COVID, then your body can just it doesn't know how to process all these emotions, and you can just randomly get a panic attack. It doesn't have to be set off by anything. It can just happen randomly. So I was like, oh my God, like, I hope that never happens again. That was the worst experience of my life. And then sure enough, the next day at the same time, same thing happens. I couldn't get control of myself. I was spiraling. It was just as bad as the night before, and it was awful. So this is where the repetitive cycle began, and I started having one panic attack every single night around the same time, and it was literally horrible. I wasn't controlling it. I knew I had no control of it, but I couldn't convince anyone else around me that I wasn't controlling it. Didn't know why this was happening. I didn't know what to do. I felt so alone. I was having an hour-long panic attack every single night at the same time. It felt like such a burden to my parents, even though they were so helpful and caring and they knew I was going through this horrible thing, but I didn't want to bother them every single night when I was having this panic attack. A, there was nothing that they could do, and B, I didn't want to put them through that stress. So I would try to manage it by myself, but it was horrible, and I would just sit for an hour, not being able to breathe, freaking out, sweating, my body literally in pain from how much anxiety I was experiencing. And this is where I think I definitely began to have a little bit of depression, because I would wake up and the only thing I'd be thinking about was how many hours until the next panic attack. The only time I felt happy was when I was going to bed, because I knew that the panic attack was over and then at least I could sleep. And it was so bad that like I would go to bed and my body would be hurting from the amount of stress I just put it through. I didn't have the energy in the day to do anything. I wanted to sleep around and lay in bed all day. I was not happy. I remember telling my mom that I literally could not do this anymore, and that I felt like my body was like fighting against me. It was the most miserable I've ever been. I felt like there was no cure and that I was gonna be like that forever. We were still in lockdown pretty much, but we would go to like a few places. We would go to the store sometimes or go visit a family member, and I wouldn't leave the house after like 5 o'clock. I had to have like a very regimented routine. Like I literally wouldn't go outside after 5, because if I was anywhere away from the house, like I would freak out that I was gonna have a panic attack. I felt so trapped and so miserable, and I didn't know what to do. I think it was a month and a half in that I asked my mom if I could go to the doctor and see what was going on. So we scheduled a doctor's appointment, and I went in, and they did an EKG on me, which is like an echocardiogram, and they were like checking my like heart rhythms. And I think they said that everything was fine, but like one thing looked a little bit off, so they wanted to like check that. I went to a cardiologist that same day, and they did all kinds of tests on me. They did this thing where I had to like lay and hold my breath, and then they would like check different parts of me, and it took like an hour and a half. It was crazy. They also put a Holter monitor on me. So it was like, I'll put a picture, but it was like this little square thing that they put over my chest, and it was very visible. So everywhere I went, people could see it. It would measure my heartbeats and all the things for the next 2 weeks. And anytime I was having an anxiety episode, I would hit it. So as crazy as this sounds, I honestly desperately wanted something to be wrong with me, because I was literally so desperate for a cure. I thought maybe I have a heart arrhythmia, or I don't even know, but something wrong. The last thing I wanted it to be was just anxiety, because I knew that A, that wouldn't be taken seriously, B, they would tell me it's all in my head, and C, it would prove to everyone around me that I was crazy. So I really wanted there to be something that I could be like, look, I swear I'm not crazy, like there's something wrong with me. And I was just so desperate for someone to understand what I was going through, and I felt like the doctors were trying their hardest, but like there was just nothing I could explain to them that would fully get my point across, if that makes sense. So I ended up starting therapy in the middle of all of this, just to try and help. And I will say, I don't know if it was just my therapist, but it didn't really do much for me. I felt like I was kind of just talking, which is good. I definitely needed to talk, but I just didn't really feel like I was getting that much out of it. It really wasn't helping my anxiety. I felt like she just didn't really understand what I was going through. I felt like nobody could. And I definitely recommend therapy. I think therapy is amazing. So finally, I got my test results back and nothing was wrong with me, just like we all thought. And they told me that it was just anxiety. And I was devastated because I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how is this all in my head? I don't know how to control this. There's no way it's just in my head. So I ended up just going back to my like normal doctor instead of like cardiologists and things like that. I went back to my normal doctor and he explained to me that just because it was anxiety doesn't mean there's not like a chemical imbalance going on. Could have started with me being anxious about having a panic attack, but now it's gotten to the point where my body just like automatically does this every night because it's like conditioned to do so, and it's like a chemical problem that's wrong with me. So just because it was anxiety didn't mean that like I was controlling it. It could totally be out of my control. And the only way to stop these nightly panic attacks was to break the cycle. My doctor ended up prescribing me a medication. I don't actually remember what it's called. He prescribed me like a very small dosage of it, and I actually never used the medication. I'm a big advocate for medication for anxiety, depression, whatever you may have. I was just really nervous about taking it because I didn't know how it would make me feel, what it was going to do to me. But I will say, I think I have like a mental thing where like I don't actually need the medication, but I need to know that I have the medication, if that makes sense. I think just knowing that I had this medication that I didn't have to take on a daily basis, it was like a take upon needed, which I really like. And just knowing that I had access to that there was something that could help me, and that there was a doctor who understood what I was going through and didn't make me feel like it was my fault, if that makes sense. I had my first panic attack in March, and this was the middle of May. School was ending. I was still virtual, but I was going to a summer camp, my very first summer camp, and it was the first time I was going to be around people in like literally a year and a half, and I was really nervous about it. My parents were really nervous about me going because I was having all these anxiety issues. They thought I like was going to want to leave right away, but I just knew I had to do this for myself, and honestly, going to summer camp was the best decision. It was the best thing for me. I definitely still had some anxiety, but the nightly panic attacks went away. I felt so free and so much better, and it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I had the medication, I never took it, but just knowing that I broke the cycle and that I was gonna come out on the other end made a world of difference. I came back home and my anxiety was significantly better. I was no longer having nightly panic attacks, was just so much happier and freer. I was diagnosed with panic disorder and generalized anxiety. Now I definitely think I have more of a situational anxiety. So as before I was getting these panic attacks for no reason, now something has to like set me off. I think the thing for me that scares me the most is not having control. And so when I was having these nightly panic attacks, I felt like I was out of control of my own body, so I would freak out about it and make it even worse. Now it's things like if I'm in the car and I'm not driving and I feel like I have no control of the situation, and I hate elevators because I'm trapped. I get really nervous to get on roller coasters sometimes because I feel like there's no getting off once you get on. When I was like taking ACTs, I would get really anxious because I knew like if I have a panic attack, I can't leave the room, like, or else like my scores will be canceled. So it's like weird things, and I know that these sound really weird and they're honestly embarrassing to talk about, but that's how I really feel. I still struggle with this, honestly, on a daily basis. The most recent thing that I actually dealt with and feel like I was really proud of myself for doing is I have a huge fear of flying. Not because I'm scared of like planes or anything like that, but I feel like the thought of being like trapped in an airplane, thousands of miles in the sky, like alone, no way to exit, like just terrifies me. And I hadn't flown in 5 years. My family wanted to go to Disney World and we were flying, and I was nervous about it. Like I was anxious on the daily for, I want to say, 2 weeks in advance. It was all I would think about. I was terrified. My stomach was in knots. I was sweating all the time. It was really bad, and it's honestly embarrassing to talk about. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I really didn't know. I was crying at nighttime. I was so stressed out, but I really wanted to do this because I need to fly in life. I have to. And it was the first time I was flying since ever having a real panic attack, because I didn't have my first real panic attack until 2021, and I didn't know how I would handle a panic attack in the air. So my mom knew I was really nervous. I was glad somebody knew. I would definitely recommend, if you're going through anxiety, have somebody in your party and your family know what you're going through so that they can know the signs if you're not doing well and try and help you out of it. So things that I did on this flight, I definitely came prepared. I had a little backpack, and I actually had a little section of it that was just my like anxiety pack. So something that really helps me when I'm having anxiety is feeling more in my body. When I'm really stressed, it feels like I can't feel, I can't breathe, I can't move, and I feel like feeling like I'm in my body and that I'm breathing, that I'm okay, helps me a lot. I try to stick to the 5 senses. So the first thing that I do is I make sure I'm chewing gum, because having something minty in my mouth really helps, or Ricola. I really like Ricolas too. Just having something minty in my mouth makes it just feel more open. Second is I have a fan. I love feeling something on my face. It makes me feel like I'm in the open, I'm in the air, I'm not trapped in a tight enclosed space. It just helps me feel in control. So the fan is like literally number 1 tip. Absolutely love my fan. I honestly bring a fan a lot of places because if I'm having anxiety, it'll help so much. Next thing I had these big headphones on, not AirPods, headphones, and I had them playing one song on repeat that I knew all the words to. That way I like knew what was coming and I would just like sing along in my head, and it just it felt like I was in my own world doing my own thing. I had water in hand. I kept drinking water just to keep my body moving. I didn't do this on the plane, but chewing ice helps me a lot, so that's a really good tip. So I would say keeping all your senses occupied, doing things with your hands, having something in your mouth, listening to music really helps. Honestly, the anxiety before the flight was way worse than the flight was. I also use this thing, it was like an anxiety patch. I put it like right here on my wrist, and it's like hemp, I think. I don't know if it helped. Like, I never felt different. I can handle anxiety if it's just like my heart's beating kind of fast and I'm just a little bit nervous, but when it gets out of control and I literally feel like I'm going to pass out, that's when it's really bad and I feel like I can't do anything about it. So I feel like the patch helped me from not freaking out too much, and I was totally fine. I was so proud of myself for doing it, and I feel a lot less scared of flying now, which is awesome. That was just one of my first like big successes dealing with my anxiety. For me personally, I don't feel like there will ever be a day where I overcome my anxiety, conquering it and knowing that I don't have to like abide by it all the time. I can do things that are scary. That is the most brave thing I can do. And now I would say I feel like a girl living with anxiety rather than anxiety living with a girl, if that makes sense. I no longer feel like my anxiety controls my everyday life. It definitely affects some of my decisions. I'm definitely conscious of it, but I no longer allow it to control me, and I have things that I now do when I'm nervous to help me. I really think when I was going through those 2 months of misery with my anxiety, I was just surviving. I wasn't actually living, and I felt like anxiety was who I was going to be for the rest of my life, and that's not true. If you have anxiety, I know how debilitating it can feel, like you can't do anything, that your life is just living with this anxiety every single day, and I know how horrible it can be. You deserve to break free of that. And I also know that my anxiety is nowhere near to what so many people deal with. I know there are people that are miserable every single day of their life, and I don't ever want to take away from that. I know that that is a whole nother level of a struggle that I could never even imagine, and I'm so grateful that mine is in my control to some degree. And if you're struggling with that form of anxiety, I am so sorry, and I really hope you get the help that you deserve and that you know that there are other people like you. I know I'm lucky to not be dealing with that, but I still wanted to share my story because I feel like it's still relevant and impactful, and I hope that this can show that you can get over the hump and that can continue to live your life even if you have anxiety. So yeah, I would definitely say that coming to college has made me realize I can overcome things, I can do scary things and be brave. And yeah, my biggest tip would just be to get the help you need. If you need medication, take medication. If you need therapy, therapy's great. If you just want to tell your friends about it, that's good too. Whatever is going to help you do that and know that you are not alone. I am always happy to listen. If you want to DM me on Instagram, if you want to comment down below, I'm here for you guys. I love you guys and I want to be here for you. I really hope that this video helped. Anxiety is so scary and it can really take over your life if you don't do something about it. And I had to break the cycle I know that that's so hard and so scary, and there's nothing I can tell you that's gonna just make it better, but I hope that this video helped you realize that you can overcome scary things and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I hope that this video spoke to some of you guys. I know it's really different from a lot of my content. Next week we'll be right back to all my fun, upbeat, happy content, but I just wanted to make this video because I thought it was important. Hopefully this can help at least one person. So thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so much. I hope you're having an amazing week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!